the illest, of course. Real fans, real talk, we the illest on court. Real fans, real talk, we as real as you thought. Real fans, real talk, reporting live from the cam. High in demand, so please stand by if you can. What we got is worth a lot, so put a tie in your plans. On court, talking sports through the eyes of the fans. With Trip Young, Emerald Marie, Eric Sanchez. You heard what I said, we elite. Check the latest topics and stay ahead of the beat. Keep us in your topics and we ahead of the streets.
It's Johnny Floss, bringing a different type of blend. Backing up Misfit to make sure y'all tuned in. You gotta watch, this show is one of a kind. Updates on your TV screen from 8 to 9. For the older folks, or even if you younger, no matter what sport, this show, we got it covered. It's filmed live in the middle of BK, so ain't no better sports show to watch on Thursdays.
Real fans, real talk, we as real as you thought. Real fans, real talk, we the illest, of course. Real fans, real talk, we the illest on court. Real fans, real talk, we as real as you thought.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another Quarantine TV edition of Real Fans, Real Talk. Oh, man, y'all know I'm in a good mood today. But we're going to get into that in a minute. Let me introduce my co-host, my brother, legend in 2 games, Eric Sanchez. What's up, man?
It's really good, bro. I know you're in a great mood after yesterday's victory. You're heading into the weekend. You're pretty good right now. Yankees moving on. Lakers in firm control of what's going on right now in the NBA Finals, but we got a lot to get into, man.
Oh, that's a definite fact. I should probably switch up and throw my Yankees hat on halfway through today's show just to represent, because they did get the little sweep in, and we had a couple of a particular former Yankee who I'm just getting disgusted by. Now he's pissing me off, Mark Teixeira. That the guy that sucked up all of them funds the last 3 seasons, he was with the Yankees. And since he's been gone, he's several times he's had some things to say. And he actually picked against the Yankees in this series versus Cleveland, which actually had me pissed off because I'm just like, yo, bro, like, you was a Yankee. You got your championship ring with the Yankees. Like, I don't care who they playing, even if you don't feel like they not gonna the Yankees can't win. You still supposed to ride with the Yankees, man. You got your ring with the Yankees. You got $100 million plus with the Yankees, and like I said, them last 3 years, you basically was getting a check for nothing.
Well, I mean, we've talked about it before. Some of these analysts and guys who make predictions on TV, they love to do things for the shock value. They love to do things that's like, oh wow, that's different. But I just don't understand, as I said before, I'm not a Yankee fan. I'm picking the Yankees to go to World Series because that was my pick before the season started. And going into these playoffs, this is probably the healthiest the Yankees have been all season. So for me, if you would have picked the Yankees to start the season with Garrett Cole, with a healthy Judge, with Glaber, with Gary Sanchez, if you would pick them then, what changes now? Because this is what the team was built for. The team was built for a deep playoff run. They weren't built to lose a 2 out of 3 in the first round, no matter who it would have been against. Now granted, if they had to play Tampa in the first round, maybe that's a different series and it goes all 3 games. They got Tampa coming up now. They look to be the 2 best teams in the American League, but I would still pick with the Yankees because, again, they've got the better pitcher in the series and they've got the better offense.
Yeah, and it definitely showed, especially, game 1, Garrett Cole was lights out. No debating. Yankees win 12-3. But game 2, it was a dogfight. Went down. Basically came down to the 9th inning, and the Yankees were able to fight back, get some run support, late in the 9th, and then Aroldis Chapman he came in, he does what he does, and he closed out, and the Yankees move on, and now they'll be playing the Rays and the ALDS, which I'm also looking forward to. But we're in the finals right now in the NBA. And we can get back to Major League Baseball a little bit later on in the show because we got some sad news that we're going to get to a little bit later. But we want to start out with the excitement. My main man, King James, is 2 wins away from getting his 4th NBA championship ring, which I'm ecstatic about. Complete dominance in the first 2 games. And I know, the Heat are missing Bam Adebayo and Goran Dragic, but let's be clear. Game one, before they went down, Miami was also already getting the breaks beat off of them by the Lakers. They couldn't do anything with Anthony Davis. LeBron James was doing whatever he wanted. Playoff Rondo was balling, and I'm changing Danny Green's name to Finals Danny because it seems like the only time he actually plays the ball is in the finals, and he's shooting the way he was shooting, in San Antonio during the NBA Finals. Him and Caldwell Pope have both been knocking down the three consistently for the Lakers in both games. Kuzma came off the bench and gave them some points. They have complete control of this series. I know last week, you know what I'm saying, I was telling you, I said I wanted to say 5, but if it goes 6, I'm not going to be upset. But the way things are going now, with Dragic is going to be out for the rest of the series. I know Bam will be back for game 3, but I think the Lakers sweep this series.
Yeah, I mean, even with Bam coming back in game 3, is he going to be 100% healthy, or is we're getting an 80% Bam? Because they need 100% of Bam to have any type of shot to slow down Anthony Davis. 80% of Bam just isn't going to get the job done. I never put too much stock in game 1. We've talked about this before, because game 2 is where all the adjustments are made. So I'm not surprised that the Lakers blew them out. But at the same time, I think that, this series is over because they've already taken Miami's heart. I don't think Miami has any will to fight. It showed yesterday. They came out in the first quarter. They were very flat. They didn't get it going until midway through the third quarter. And even though the game scoreboard-wise looked like it was close, Lakers could have easily been up 25 points at any point in this game. It almost seemed like they were toying with the Miami Heat. The series is over. It's unfortunate because as fans, we don't get to see the Miami Heat at full strength and see if they could compete. As you mentioned, game 1, Dragic goes down, Bam goes down. They're not quite the same team because that's 2 of your 5 starters, and it also eliminates your depth. And also, we knew already that the best 2 players in this series both play on the Lakers side of things. So you needed to be at full strength to even compete. Right now, Miami is struggling just to compete. I don't see how they could even win a game. I think this series is over at the most 5 games, but I really think the next 2 games are it. I think we're done with basketball.
Yeah, I got to agree with you 1,000% on that. As good as the Miami Heat have been, and again, I definitely want to give flowers to that organization because they played very well up until this point, and even still, Jimmy Butler truly has displayed the heart of a champion. Our guy, the youngin' Swaggy T, he hasn't been slowed down. He's still doing what he's been doing throughout the playoffs. So I want to commend him for keeping it up, because a lot of times we'll see that, and then we go into the finals where the pressure is the at the biggest point is going to be, and a guy like that might cool off. He has not. He's been playing very well. He's still, no matter who's in front of him, he's not afraid to take the shot. He's not afraid to get to the basket. So we got to commend Tyler Herro for the way he's been playing ball. I'm a bit disappointed in Duncan Robinson. He didn't score his first points until game 2. He had a 3-pointer in game 2, which was his first points of the NBA Finals. He's been shaky throughout the playoffs, and I can take every other game, but when you're talking about every other 2 games or 3 games where you finally get to double-digit scoring and put the pressure on the other team, with your knockdown 3-point shooting ability, but that just hasn't been the case with Duncan Robinson. He struggled through this series. They may have to switch things up and take him out of the starting lineup, maybe coming off the bench. That might actually help. But, again, this thing is over. Even like you said, even if Bam comes back, I don't know if he's going to be 100%. And then even Bam at 100%, Anthony Davis is in a very unique situation because there may be 3 guys in the league that could do anything with Anthony Davis, and then also have the ability on the offensive side of the court to actually put up the numbers to where he's going to have to work. And unfortunately, the Miami Heat don't have any of those guys that would be able to put that kind of pressure on Anthony Davis. You know, Jokic been closer to one of those guys, is not the defensive player, to where he could actually contain Anthony Davis. Offensively, he can still put up 25 to 30 points a night, if you need him to. But on the defensive end, he can't do it. And again, Miami doesn't have the guy. So Anthony Davis is getting anything that he wants. He's taking it. I mean, at this point, I got Anthony Davis with the edge to get Finals MVP. Not, and it's again not to take away from anything that LeBron has done, because LeBron's been phenomenal as well. We saw last night he actually led the team in scoring only by a point. And he put up with 33, 9, and 9. So I mean, he's putting up Finals MVP numbers as well. But Anthony Davis, what he's doing is just so effortless that it looks like completely lopsided anytime he has the basketball.
To me, AD is the Finals MVP, and that's not a knock against Braun in any way, but AD is dominating the game without even having the ball in his hands most of the game. I mean, we saw yesterday the putback dunks, the rebounds. Those are situations where the play isn't even being run through him, and yet he's affecting the play. And on the other side, there were a couple of times where just his length alone on defense affected some of the things that Miami did. To your point of like players being able to match up with AD, you're right. There aren't many guys, if any, in the league. I don't even think Jokic is in that conversation, because Jokic is nowhere near the athlete that AD is. As gifted as he is offensively, he nowhere near comes close to what AD does defensively, and he's not the athlete to even threaten you in that way. Bam was going to be a big part of this series, because Bam's athleticism was going to allow Miami to play AD one-on-one without having to worry about double teams. But on the flip side, where we're really seeing the impact of Bam is Miami has no one on their team who can get them a basket in the paint. Everything is predicated off just getting into the lane and kicking it out. And when all you're doing is kicking it out, you see the Lakers continue to rotate, and the Lakers are not respecting any drive to the basket because they know nobody's going to finish in the lane. Bam gives you that aspect, because Bam is a guy who around the rim will finish, will dunk it on you, could tip it back in. So not having him and then having to go with Leonard, go with Kelly Olynyk, those guys are solid players, but they're nowhere near the athlete or the player that Bam is, where he's going to force you to respect him inside the paint. So I think, Miami's in a lot of trouble. As you mentioned, I think Duncan Robinson is struggling because Duncan Robinson now has to play a role that he's not comfortable playing. His best role is when he's your fourth or fifth best scorer, behind Butler, Dragic, Hero, Bam, because now he gets those wide open threes because you're paying attention to all these other guys. Tyler Hero could create some offense off the dribble. We know Jimmy could do it. We know Gorgon can do it. We know Bam does so many different things. Oh, by the way, Duncan Robinson now is getting an open elbow three or open corner three. Now you don't get that anymore, because guess what? We're not respecting Kelly Olynyk as much. We're not respecting Kendrick Nunn as much. So you don't get those open shots, and everything off the screen. You're seeing the Lakers running him hard off the screens, forcing him to take contested shots. The series is over, bro. There's no other way to put it. The series is over. It's just a matter of, is this going to be a clean sweep, a gentleman's sweep? It's over. There is no way, and for anybody who was Jimmy Butler included, as much as I love Jimmy Butler, because he guaranteed a victory last night, and I knew that was already trouble for even trying to guarantee that. There is no way that the Miami Heat, even fully healthy, would be able to beat the Lakers 4 out of the next 5 games, because that's what it's going to take to be able to win the series. You got to win 4 out of the next 5 to win the series. So you're telling me a hurt Miami team is going to do that? No way.
Yeah, like they really have no chance in this series, and I'm sorry. I would have liked for it to be a little more competitive, but LA is just too big, too strong. And usually, when you have the size, you give a little bit with the speed and the athleticism. But this is a unique team that has the size, the speed, the athleticism. They got the guys that can knock down the 3-point shot. They got your rebounders, and again, shout out to Anthony Davis, 8 offensive rebounds in game 2. There's no way that you're going to beat the Lakers if Anthony Davis is getting 8 offensive rebounds. And we saw a couple nights ago. You know, Dwight Howard, he's had those big offensive rebound production. You know, he's playing really well. They did the bigs are completely dominant. You know, we kind of spoke last week about if the Lakers guards would hit their shots and we would be able to keep Dwight Howard in the game. And they've done that games 1 and 2. Dwight Howard's been able to stay on the court and he's looking good. I haven't seen Dwight Howard play ball like this in years, you know. And then if you're gonna get 16 and 10 off the bench from Rondo, you ain't got a chance, man. I was, like he's putting up starters numbers. He's putting up starters numbers off the bench.
You're 1,000% correct. As I said in my prediction for the series, Miami's best shot was to be very efficient from three and force Dwight Howard off the floor, because Miami does not have a lineup where they can play two bigs to match up with Dwight and AD. So they needed to be knocking down the threes, force Vogel to make a tough choice as to, do I want to keep Dwight on the floor and him chasing somebody around, or am I going to go smaller and play AD at the 5? Miami has not knocked down the threes at an efficient enough rate to force him to do that. So guess what? Dwight can stay out on the floor 25, 30 minutes. You know what I'm saying? And AD doesn't have to worry about playing the 5. And then, like you said, oh, by the way, when we want to give Braun a couple minutes rest, we can bring Rondo in to facilitate everything. So it's just right now, everything's going right for the Lakers. Nothing that needed to go right for Miami is going right for them. They're not winning 4 out of the next 5 games, point blank, period. Shout out to them. They had a great season. They had a hell of a playoff run, but this is where it stopped.
Yeah, and maybe things might be different if we were talking about games 1 and 2 being played in LA, and then now we're flying to Miami. Maybe, you know, at full strength, not with Bam out and Tragic out. Maybe, but even still, even with that, like it's just a mismatch. And I when I think about that, I think about, you know how when you play 2K, right, or if you play Madden. And you know, you got the guys who in their circle, they're the best. You know what I mean? They're untouchable. Nobody can beat them, you know? And then once they step out of their circle and they go into your circle, they get smoked. And that's what we're seeing right here. It was all good just a week ago in the Eastern Conference. You know, you knocked off a really deep Celtics team. You knocked off the back-to-back MVP and the current defensive player of the year. You got the Pacers up out of here. But now we're playing big boy basketball. And this is a whole different type of ball game that you guys are in. And it shows the difference in the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference. Because, you know, the Western Conference, there's a lot of 2 superstar teams that you got to deal with.
I don't even think it was the conference. I just think it's the experience. I mean, you know, Miami was able to get away playing zone against Milwaukee and Boston. And those teams are still very young and inexperienced, right? So they can't figure it out. You can't play zone against LeBron because LeBron, he's going to dissect that by the second possession. Like, you might get away with it 1 possession. By the second possession, he's already going to figure it out. And then when you throw in a veteran like Rondo on the floor with him, now you have 2 guys dissecting your defense and figuring out, like, all right, AD, if you set up here along the baseline, I'm going to break down this first defender. And now that's just easy dunks and putbacks for you. You know, we saw it a couple times on the drives where Rondo would beat the first defender. And now you're sitting in zone. That back defender has to help. If not, it's an easy layup. And I'm just going to give it to AD for a dunk. Then the next time you don't help and LeBron just gets an easy floater in the lane. Like, those are uncontested shots that Milwaukee and Boston couldn't figure out how to get, where the Lakers, again, the veteran experience of those guys, particularly LeBron James, just said, look, you're not going to be able to throw that same defense at me and think that it's going to slow me down or force me to shoot wild 3-pointers the way Milwaukee and Boston did. We still going to get whatever shot we want when we want, and you guys are going to have to adjust to us. So, yes, a part of it, like you said, is the fact that they're facing 2 of the better players, and these are the 2 best players they've seen in a playoff series. But I think a big part of it is just the experience of the Laker team as a whole. LeBron's been here before. Rondo's been here before. Danny Green's been here before. Dwight has played in the finals before. Frank Vogel's coached in 2 Eastern Conference championship games series before. So up and down the line, you got a bunch of guys who are not scared of the moment, and they're not going to be scared by a zone that you throw at them.
And shout out to Frank Vogel as well, because he hasn't let the team get lackadaisical. And when I say that, you see the way they completely dominated Miami in game one. Sometimes when teams they start feeling themselves, you can start off slow, and slow could turn into a close game, and Miami might be able to steal at the end of the fourth quarter. But he's done his job keeping the guys up, putting the right rotations in, trust and really trusting in his guys who have come through in this NBA Finals. And the main two guys who we were worried about, Pope and Danny Green, were they going to be able to knock down those shots? And they have, man. You got to give those guys a lot of credit. And just the Lakers bench in general, they're a bit streaky because again they don't have that third guy. They have a rotation of the third guy, so it might be Dwight Howard one night and he's got 12 and 9 and he's the boost that they need, or then it might be Rondo and he's got 16 and 10, or it might be Kuzma and he can get you 15, 16 points off the bench. But it's been those two guys, Danny Green and Caldwell Pope, that have really made it easier for the Lakers to dominate this series. Because again, if those guys aren't hot and they're not making the threes that they're taking, games will look a little bit closer. And if it's close, somebody could sneak one in. So they've been, Frank Vogel has done a really good job. So definitely want to give him his credit. We saw that Miami zone work pretty much, again in the last two rounds. They lost two to Boston, they only lost one to Milwaukee. So, we saw that zone looking deadly. And then, once you mix the pieces with the right coaching, that thing gets broken down. And now we see Lakers up 2-0 and it's looking like they're gonna sweep the finals. And listen, I'm okay with that. I'll take a sweep. You know what? Let my man LeBron get his fourth in. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, I'll be the first to tell you, like I always say, I don't want my team to win because of injuries or because of some outside reason. I always want both teams to be at full strength because I don't want to hear the excuses that, because people will come up with anything. Oh, well, they lost because, even though we know in this situation, it was already looking done with the full Miami Heat team in. And the Lakers I think they're just a better team regardless. But, like let's say last year, for example, do we give Kawhi credit because he got the job done? But does anyone feel like if Clay and Kevin Durant are playing for Golden State last season in the finals, that Toronto beats that team as good as Kawhi was?
No, they would not have beat Golden State. I think what we saw in Game 5, which was really the only game KD played in that series, and he only played like a quarter and a half. We saw how much better Golden State was than the Raptors.
Yeah.
Just from that quarter and a half. And then they end up winning Game 5 with Clay also getting hurt as well in the fourth quarter of that game. Yeah. So I think we know that, but I'm always of the thinking of, look, you play who's in front of you, bro. Like from a fan perspective, I would have loved to see the Lakers and Clippers in a 7-game series to go to the finals, because in my mind, they were the best two teams in basketball this year, but we didn't get that. And so I'm not going to knock the Lakers for getting to the finals because the Lakers have to play who's in front of them. Yeah. If you guys want to see me play this team, but that team can't win to get there, that's not my fault. You know what I'm saying? So I don't, to me, the injuries, the upsets in the playoffs, that's all part of the game. You still play who's in front of you. This does not diminish anything the Lakers are doing just because Miami is not at full strength. That's not the Lakers' fault. You know what I'm saying? If God forbid, if Braun were to tweak his ankle in Game 3 and has to miss 2 games, nobody's going to say, oh, Miami shouldn't be in this series because Braun tweaked his ankle. No, we're going to say, well, that's what it is. They got AD and AD got to step up. And, the quote unquote term next man up is true. The next guy got to step up and be ready to play. That's why you build the team. So for the people that feel that way,
Eric, you're sensible, you're logical, and you're not a hater. So you know what I mean. So when you say that, it's like, all right, we should all kind of get that's what it is. But again, you have guys that are haters or guys that play favorites throughout the media that are like, all
Like
this.
we talking Skip Bayless.
Well,
We
that's the
know,
biggest hater.
right. But listen, in every sport, every championship, there's always that one moment that's like, man, if that had gone differently, they probably don't win it. And that's why so many times the best team doesn't always win the championship, because there are those little moments. We know for a fact the start of the Golden State dynasty was helped by injuries along the way. They didn't, you know what I'm saying? They didn't have to go through that San Antonio team with Kawhi Leonard because he was out. They had little injuries along the way. The Clippers were probably better than Golden State that first Golden State championship. Not to mention, they get to the finals and Kyrie gets hurt in game one when Kevin Love's already out. That's the start of their dynasty, right?
Oh, we can go back even further because they played Portland and Nurkic wasn't there.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
So they did have a.
There's always every team who wins. So it was no different for Toronto last year. Toronto got one of the luckiest bounces on a shot ever, right? If they don't get that bounce against Philly, the course of history may be completely different, because maybe Philly goes to a championship. Maybe Jimmy Butler stays in Philly with Embiid and Simmons, and we're talking about those guys completely different. Their legacy now is completely different. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely right.
Let's not forget when Boston first put together their big three of KG, Ray Allen, and Paul Pierce. They went 7 games in the first round as the number 1 seed against the 8th seeded Atlanta Hawks team. Had they lost that game, we talking about their legacy differently. You know what I'm saying? But they got the breaks. And then when they got to the finals, they faced a Laker team that wasn't completely healthy either. Nobody ever talks about that, but they weren't completely healthy because Gasol was dealing with some injuries, and the Celtics beat them. The next time they played, the Lakers beat the Celtics, but nobody remembers that Kendrick Perkins got hurt in that series, and Kendrick Perkins was their starting center. So, there's always, through the course of history, there's always going to be that moment. But listen, winners win, point blank, period. Yeah. Winners win. And I hate that it's happening in Miami the way it's happening, but I don't think there were many people who thought Miami could win this series even at full strength. So let's not act as if the injuries are changing what we thought about the series. If you had the Lakers winning in 6 and now the injuries happen and the Lakers win in 5, what's the big difference? You still had the Lakers winning the series. Exactly. You know what I'm saying? So to me, it is what it is. We got to congratulate the team that's out there playing, and they got to handle their business with whoever's in front of them. The Lakers could easily have a letdown right now and lose a couple games in a row. We're not going to say, oh, Miami's injured. We're going to say, wow, the Lakers really blew that opportunity to beat a team that was wounded.
Yeah, exactly. Really quick, because I got to discuss somebody else who's been doing a little bit of hating, not named Skip Bayless. But we saw in game 2 that ABC did not air the national anthem, which, I mean, at this point, you know what I'm saying, with everything that's been going on, I think that I may have wanted to see it, just because that just gives us an extra look at the players, especially with the players wearing the vote shirts before the start of I guess like the last round of the playoffs. They've been doing the vote shirts. So I would have liked to see that, even though we still get to see it on the sidelines from the guys that aren't in the game. But you know what I'm saying? But ABC, I guess they are making somewhat of a stance, and they're just like, we're not going to air it. What were your thoughts on that?
I was a little surprised, and the reason I noticed it was because there was kind of the pregame was kind of late in what they were doing, because there was a point where as they were still talking about their picks for the night, they immediately cut to Jamie Foxx and Angela Bassett, who did the monologue to start the game out. So, I don't know if it was a matter of just time restrictions and they wanted this monologue was that important where they wanted to show that instead of the national anthem. I don't think ABC has given any true explanation as to what happened as far as time-wise. Did the Jimmy Kimmel show go too late, and maybe that's why you couldn't show it? I don't know. But nonetheless, we know it was played in the arena. We just still have not figured out why ABC did not show it yesterday.
Yeah. Well, listen, we unless ABC actually tells us why, we might not ever know. Doc Rivers and the Clippers decided to part ways. Not much longer after that, he gets the job that we spoke about D'Antoni being a favorite to get last week, and we both agreed that we didn't think D'Antoni should be the guy to get that job. I'm actually okay with Doc Rivers getting that job. Um, even though it happened mad mad quick, but I'm actually okay with Doc Rivers because at least with Doc Rivers, he's a champion. He knows what it takes to win. He's dealt with the superstar egos and that level, that caliber of players. So I think he can deal with Embiid and Ben Simmons. Um, then when you add in the fact that they also have Tobias Harris, who actually had his best year statistically under the coaching of Doc Rivers. So I think he can actually do pretty well for those guys. But I think somebody's gonna get moved this year, either Ben Simmons or Embiid. I think one of those guys is going to be out of Philly.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed because actually the last time we had the sports convo when we did the collaboration with Real Fans Real Talk and the Sanchez show, the news of Doc Rivers actually broke maybe like 2 hours after we got off air,
Yeah.
so we didn't get to give our immediate opinions on it. But I will say I'm interested to see how it plays out because for Doc Rivers, this is a tricky situation you're going into. As you said, there's already a lot of talk of trading one of your two stars. Um, Doc is going to have to go over there without his coaching staff because it looks like Ty Lue is the front runner for the Clippers and the Pelicans. It also looks like Sam Cassell is in the running for the Houston job, and those are his two top assistants. Another man that's been on his coaching staff won't be available either. That was Mike Woodson, because Mike Woodson is already part of Thibodeau's staff with the Knicks. So if you're Doc, you're going in a situation where you have these two very good, very young stars who everyone keeps claiming one of them has to be traded. And then you won't have your veteran coaching staff with you. So there's going to be a lot of uncertainty around how this team is developed and coached. You mentioned it, and I talked about it on a recent episode of the Sanchez show. I do feel somebody is going to get traded, but the guy I think is going to be traded is Tobias Harris. Tobias Harris and Doc have a history back to the Clipper days. I don't know how well they got along. However, I do know that Tobias wanted more money than they were willing to offer him, and they ultimately ended up trading him to the Sixers for Landry Shamet and a future first. So I would not be surprised if Doc and Elton Brand figure out a way to trade Tobias Harris, who has about 4 years left on his deal, to bring in their quote unquote third star. And I like Tobias Harris, but I would not be surprised, and I want to be on record as saying this because I have a feeling both these guys' names are going to be floated around. I would not be surprised if Tobias Harris is involved in a trade for either Chris Paul or Paul George. I could see either one of those trades happening. Philly really liked Paul George 2 years ago when he was a free agent before he re-signed with Oklahoma City. And I think Paul George would be the perfect third star for Philly because obviously we know he can shoot from range. He's another ball handler. He becomes an interchangeable wing player that can play with Ben Simmons. So you're not taking anything away from Ben. You're actually adding another ball handler who can shoot from three. The Chris Paul one intrigues me the most though, because I still think that the way you build the team around Ben Simmons is similar to what Dallas is doing with Luka. You can play traditional guards next to a guy like Ben Simmons because Ben Simmons is 6'9", 6'10". So he's not your prototypical 6'3" point guard. He's 6'10". So to bring in a guy like Chris Paul, who's 6'1", 6'2", but can shoot and give you veteran leadership, and a guy who can take the ball out of Ben's hands late so that everything doesn't run through Ben would be interesting. And I mentioned both those guys because they have that connection to Doc Rivers. So I think Tobias might be the guy they look to move. But ultimately, the Philly situation is very interesting to see how it's going to play out, whether one of their stars get traded, who does Doc keep on his roster as coaching staff, I should say. And then also, as we talked about, the East is going to be tougher next year. So if this team falls apart early next year, do they make a trade immediately?
I think that Doc Rivers will be able to handle it, and I'm glad he bounced back as quick as he did, just because with the Clippers losing and blowing that 3-1 lead, even though Doc Rivers took the onus and he put everything on his shoulders, Doc Rivers wasn't out there shooting threes at the side of the basket. Doc Rivers didn't tell Lou Williams to stop, and get some of them wings. Even though we ain't mad at him for it, but because it's a good spot to get some wings at. But he wasn't responsible for that. It's unfortunate. Montrez, he lost his grandmother. Rest in peace, condolences. But he doesn't have control over that. And we saw Montrez coming back into the bubble. He wasn't the same. He wasn't the sixth man of the year that they had seen all season. You know, it's Patrick Beverly gets hurt. He's one of your top defenders, and he's one of those energy guys that can just get anybody riled up, and he can frustrate anybody on the opposite team. When a season ago, when they took those 2 games from Golden State, Patrick Beverly was all over Kevin Durant, John, and talking smack and whatnot, and kind of pushed him over the edge. So I would have liked to see maybe one more year of Doc and these guys together. But again, this is what happens when you build your team to be a particular team as opposed to building the best team that you can build. This is a possibility that can happen. Now, I mean, losing a 3-1 lead, I mean, that's the extreme of the extreme. But again, I would have still tried to keep Doc and let him get one more run at it. But it is what it is. He's moving on. A couple other guys are moving on, but we're gonna switch over to the NFL. We're gonna move right on over. There's already going to be no Tennessee Titans versus the Pittsburgh Steelers this week because of COVID tests. Several positive tests between players and staff members, but now it's just been announced that Cam Newton has also tested positive for COVID-19. So we may not even see that Chiefs Patriots game. They're waiting on some other tests to come back in from guys that had been around Cam to see what's going on. So it may be another situation where bye weeks get changed and that Chiefs bye week winds up being this week. Same thing with the Patriots, and they move that to another week. Same thing as they did with the Titans versus Steelers game. This was a big game for both teams because both teams are looking to go far into the playoffs, and you need that edge. You need this game for the win. If they play the game and Cam doesn't play, I don't think that the Patriots really have any chance of winning. But I give them a small chance if Cam actually does play.
Yeah, so they're Cam's not going to play. Last I was reading with Adam Schefter was reporting that this game is probably going to be pushed to Monday or Tuesday. Patriots were still getting some tests done today, and they were expecting to, have some results by at some point today to know whether they could fly out because they were supposed to fly out to Kansas City today. It's big. One, like you mentioned, because it's early in the season, and these are 2 perennial playoff teams that are trying to position themselves as you go into that second quarter of the season, because this would have ended that first 4 games, and now you transition into that middle part of the season. But I think it's big for the Patriots too, because the Patriots were starting to gel. I think Cam was playing really good ball, and we always hear about the Patriot way and how you got to be a one of their type of guys. And Cam seemed to fit in very nicely there. I mean, Belichick has continued to sing high praises and say nice things about Cam every week. So it looked like they were really starting to gel and things were moving in the right direction. And I would hope that he's only showing mild symptoms. That way he could possibly be back on the field in another week or 2 and won't miss too much time. But ultimately we want him to just be healthy, bro. We want him to get right, moving forward so that we can continue to see the excitement he brings to the field every week.
Yeah, definitely want to see that. Jerry Jones, he's never one to bite his tongue. But he was singing some praises for the president of the United States, just calling him the hardest worker he's ever seen. Which for me, I thought that was a little bit odd. Especially since you've owned the Cowboys organization for some time, and I'm pretty sure you've had some hard workers in your organizations. You've several Hall of Famers. In football it's not an easy job to have when you got to deal with everything that's going on and try to stay healthy. So I would think you might know somebody else that was a bit of a hard worker. But he said it because obviously we all know at this point, if you don't know, the president actually has caught COVID-19. I didn't even know what to say to that, because first of all, I don't even know, and I don't want to make light of the situation because it's still, but with all the things that he's done Like I wouldn't even put it past him to that this would be some nonsense just to help him out in the polls later on, so he can come back. Yeah, super Trump. I survived COVID and I came back and I'm ready to kick butt. So I wouldn't even put that past him. In this situation, but I just thought it was ironic that 2 days after you sit up at the debate and you try and clown Vice President Biden for always having a mask on, and now you go back and now you got COVID. And I thought it was the irony of it was just crazy.
I mean, there's so many ironies in this whole story. I will say to Jerry Jones's comment of he's the hardest worker. I mean, that's all nonsense. And I would like to remind everyone that there was a time when Donald Trump used to criticize President Obama for how often he would play golf. And I may be off by a few months, but I believe in President Trump's first 2 years as president, he was out playing golf and took more days out of office playing golf than Obama did in his whole 8 years as president. So, yeah. and I could be off. Maybe it was 2.5 years, but you get the point.
Yeah. I'm with you.
All right, but the ironies are there, like you said. Not only criticizing the mask, or calling it a hoax, saying the CDC didn't know what they were talking about, telling people to inject themselves with bleach, all those things. So, we would hope that the president is a man of his word and he takes his own advice on a lot of those things that he put out there to the American public. And for anybody who says, oh, let's be sensitive, it's a human life, we are being very sensitive. We're being as sensitive as he was to everyone else during this pandemic. So let's keep that in mind as well. The same energy you put out is the same energy you receive. And this is the energy you put out to everyone else during this pandemic. You let the American people down by not only right. Let's be honest. You let the American people down not only by the way you handled the pandemic, but by how insensitive you were towards those who were affected by the pandemic. So it's only right that we give you the same energy back that you gave us.
Yeah, so when you see all the memes popping up, listen, everybody gets memes. So, don't feel sensitive about it. If you knew better, you do better. Change your attitude, and people would feel differently about you. But when you carry yourself as an arrogant asshole, what do you think is gonna come in a situation like this? But right. I digress. We ain't gonna spend too much time.
No, we're not gonna spend too much time. And as you said, listen. All bets are off, because this could be legit. This could be a hoax. This could be propaganda. This could be a political strategy. All bets is off when it comes to Donald Trump.
Exactly. Again, really quick, baseball, Yankees will advance to the ALDS. They get back to it this week playing Tampa. We want to send our condolences to Cardinals great Bob Gibson, who passed away, I believe, 84 years young. So we want to send our condolences out to his family.
With Bob Gibson, two-time champion, two-time Cy Young Award winner. He also won an MVP while winning a Cy Young, I believe, in '68. 9-time All-Star. One of the greatest pitchers to ever do it. And the reason I wore my Mets hoodie was because when Joe Torre was our manager in the early 80s, he gave Bob Gibson his first coaching job. So even though he was a Cardinal, again, I salute him because he had ties to some of our stuff in the early 80s before we became pretty good in the mid 80s. One of the greatest, not only pitchers, baseball players of all time. Back in, I believe, 1999, they had done similar to the way the NBA did the 50 greatest, they did 100 greatest. And at the time, in 91, when he had already been retired from baseball for almost 30 years, almost 20 years, he was ranked the 31st greatest baseball player of all time. And again, this was him after already being out of baseball for almost 20 years. So he was definitely a legend. We don't throw that word around loosely around here. He definitely was somebody of high importance in the game of baseball and progressing the game of baseball.
And lastly, we thought this was going to happen a couple of months ago, right immediately after the Deontay Wilder loss to Tyson Fury in a controversial, when a good friend of ours, good friend of the show, Mark Breland, who was Deontay Wilder's trainer, threw in the towel after, seeing Deontay Wilder take a lot of punishment in that fight. But he has officially let Mark Breland go from his team, so he will not be training Deontay Wilder for the third fight in the series with Tyson Fury, which actually we said last week was supposed to be on December 19th, but now they're talking about pushing the date back as well. So we'll update you guys with that one when we can, and we're gonna try to get Mark Breland back on the show so we can kind of talk about the whole situation and see what's going to be next for him.
Yeah, so I want to start, and then in regards to Mark Breland, we know Mark Breland's a good friend of the show, close ties to the show. We would love to have him on to discuss not only the recent departure, but obviously just the relationship with Deontay, because he was there with Deontay early on. And I think you and I both agree, Trip. We thought he got a little, Mark Breland, I'm talking about, got a little bit of a bad rap from the media for throwing in the towel. But I respect his decision for doing it. As he always said, I care about the man, not just the fighter. Yeah. And he wanted to make sure his guy was okay to fight another day. So I hope that this parting was purely a business decision and not any lingering feelings from what took place from that Wilder Fury Part 2.
Yeah, at the end of the day, Wilder has a beautiful daughter, and Mark Breland throwing in the towel could have been the difference in whether or not he got home to see his daughter. Because when the fight starts to look like that, he had already been knocked down a couple of times, and he just wasn't looking good in that fight. And even though we've seen Deontay Wilder not look good in a fight and then he'll get the knockout punch later in the round, we had never seen Deontay Wilder get knocked down. And he didn't get knocked down just once. He got knocked down several times throughout the fight. So this situation was a little bit different, and I understand. And listen, if I'm in that ring, I want to go out. I know one of the things like with like soldiers, it was like they want an honorable death, which we dying in the field of battle, but nobody want to see you die in the in the ring. We had Ray Boom Boom Mancini on the program. Shout out to Ray. Shout out to Rington, New York. He came to one of the dinners, and his fight with Dooku Kim was the reason that Dooku Kim lost his life. So we've seen it happen before. Not that it happens all of the time in boxing, but you don't want to take that chance. When you got that type of love and respect for somebody, you'll take that heat to say, you know what, my guy didn't have it tonight, and I don't want my guy. We see how a lot of these fighters end up. I didn't want my guy to be like that, so I threw in the towel. I thought it was time, and you got to respect that, man.
Yeah, and not only just like you said, not only toying with your life, toying with your sanity, because we've seen a lot of fighters who have taken a really bad and brutal loss who are never the same moving forward. And so what Mark Breland did was to preserve, like, all right, we take the loss, we took it on the chin, fine. But we live to fight another day and we can regroup from this. But sometimes if you take a loss that's so bad, mentally, you're never the same. We know, even though in this situation was different, but we know when Miguel Cotto lost to Margarito, it was a legal substance, but we didn't know that at the time. We didn't know it was a weapon in his glove. And Cotto took a few years to really get his mind back to where it was because it was such a brutal loss.
Perfect example.
That's a perfect example. I applaud Mark Breland for what he did in understanding. Again, you care about the man more than the fighter. That's a personal relationship. You're not just my fighter. You're somebody I truly care about. And I want to make sure that you come out of this okay. And there are going to be plenty more fights moving forward. We just got to make sure we leave this one okay.
Exactly. So listen, final thought, Eric.
Final thought. Let's see. Well, make sure, of course, you're tuning into Real Fans Real Talk. Tune into the Sanchez Show. Tune into Shooting the Shit podcast. We're streaming on all platforms. Salute to my brothers out here. We out here making it happen. And just everybody stay safe, man. The fall's upon us. Let's enjoy all these sports, man. And right now, it looks like Trip, you're gonna be celebrating a 4th championship.
I mean, I'm outside, So shout out to LeBron and AD and those guys. And then really quick before we get out of here, I got to thank the sponsors, Petro Home Services, Kmart, Soundview Liquors, the Rosado firm. Big thank you to all those guys. Thank you for rocking with us for all the time that you've been rocking with us. And again, you know, we're gonna keep saying this, man. Rest in peace, Breonna Taylor. Rest in peace, Ahmaud Arbery. Rest in peace, George Floyd, and rest in peace to anybody that was lost because of police brutality in this country.
That is a fact.
For myself, Trip Young, the legend in 2 games. We up out of here, man. Peace.
Live from the can. This is real fans, real talk. Real fans, real talk. We as real as you thought. Real fans, real talk. We the illest, of course. Real fans, real talk. We the illest on court. Real fans, real talk. We as real as you thought.
What's up, guys? I'm Emerald Marie, and be sure to check us out on the web at realfansrealtalk.com. Hey, what's going on, guys? So I haven't been on YouTube in a while. I haven't been on social media. Been doing a whole lot of regrouping, getting it together in 2020. Much like everyone else, quarantine, protest, so much going on. And lately, as I think about my why, today is such a heavy day. Breonna Taylor, rest in peace. Today is one of those days that I definitely know my why I started media, why I felt so compelled to give a voice to the voiceless. And so I just wanted to share my thoughts on what happened today. So, you know, rewind. March 13th, 2020, Breonna Taylor is sleeping in her home, an EMT worker at 26 years old. The police conduct a no-knock warrant. 3 officers shoot her dead. Today, we find out that one of the officers is charged with wanton endangerment, which, just to really put this into perspective, what that means is if I were to walk outside and fire a gun in the air, I put others in danger, right? And so I could get that charge. I can get that Class D felony. And that's asinine to even think that that's appropriate. And what this says or states is that had he aimed better, then this would have been okay. Had he just only, made or shot bullets within the parameters of her apartment, then it wouldn't have gone through her neighbor's apartment. And so the bullets shot by this officer went through the wall. It did not kill or hit anyone, but the fact that there were bullet holes went through the wall of a family next door, which was full of a husband, his pregnant wife, and their young child. And so I just, today has gave me the same feeling that I had in 2012 when I physically remember feeling, I physically remember the way I felt when they released the verdict of Trayvon Martin's case. And I remember just chills went through my body. My heart sank to my stomach, knowing that this young man was 17. And at the time I was 17. And I remember putting myself in his shoes. And I can say one thing about myself personally is that I always have this thing of putting myself in other shoes, literally. It's like when I see people outside who are in need, I literally damn, that could be me tomorrow. So even with Trayvon, I felt that. I'm like, dang, he's 17 like me at the time. So here we are in 2020, you look at Breonna Taylor and I'm like, I'm 26 right now. And Breonna was 26 the day of her murder. And I live in an apartment with no man that lives here. She had a man that lived there, and he tried to protect her, and still look what happened. And so I just say all that to say, today was heavy, and I couldn't really get her off my mind. I felt an injustice to her. To what is the point of having followers? What are the point of having these apps if we're not advocating, we're not speaking up? For those who are confused why we scream Black Lives Matter, why we shout and scream her name and say her name, why we were protesting this summer in my hometown, screaming on top of my lungs, say her name, is because we have to continue to say the names of the victims being slaughtered by the police so that you guys don't forget why we are trying to incite change, fundamental change. And so I just encourage everyone, no matter the industry you're in, if you were in education and you need to make a change on the way they're teaching Black history, you need to make a change in the film industry of how we're perceiving young Black and brown faces, the stereotypes that we continue to perpetuate through film, through modeling, through creative work, through education, all of these images and all these things that are affecting biases and allowing police officers or individuals to become police officers that have now had this systemic racism since they were a child in school, in college, and so on, reflect in their work. And that Black and brown bodies still don't mean anything to these justice system. So I just had to say my initial thoughts of hearing what was going on with Breland Taylor, and I'll definitely be back with more videos. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I am going to be back on here a little bit more aggressively. There's so much going on in my life, but also more importantly, all of this is bigger than me. There's a lot going on in the world that we definitely need to talk about. So leave your comments below. Please subscribe. Follow me on Instagram, and let's just take this journey together to incite change. Peace.
Protest is growing. National outcry continues over the death of George Floyd. Last night, people protesting in Minneapolis escalated as demonstrators were left.